I love it when I say that I'm this kind of painter and people really think I mean this kind of painter. This happens to me fairly often. It might happen to you as well. In fact, it happened to me at a party the other night. I'll be asked what I do for a living and I'll say painter. And they'll say, well, you know, we have a spare bedroom that could really use a fresh coat. And it brings a big smile to my face. I am very happy when I say that I'm a painter and people assume I mean house painter. And I play right along. I'll say, you know, my plate is full right now, or I've bitten off more than I can chew and I just can't paint your room. I love food analogies. And the reason I do that is because to me, painter is more evocative of work. If you lived in the 13th century, medieval artists and craftsmen and women worked in anonymity. The word artist meant something. Nowadays, in the showbiz art world, it's very important that we brand ourselves. I'm doing it right now. And so the word artist to me doesn't tell me anything about you or your work, especially because, you know, any clown that bakes and sells gourmet cookies now is an artist. Every hairstylist is an artist. It doesn't tell me anything. To say you're an artist is a declaration. To say that you are a painter is a verb. It's work, and that's what I want to do, is show up every day here, lock my door, and work. And I remember there was a visiting instructor once, a visiting painter, who came in and said, okay, raise your hand if you're a painter. I raised my hand and he said, okay, you can leave the room. And that was the best lesson I think I've ever learned. Don't be the first one to raise your hand. Don't be so sure. I remember in the first grade, I wanted to be a jukebox when I grew up. And in about the third grade, I wanted to be a verb. I love verbs. There was that great Benjamin Franklin quote I put in the last video that says, never confuse motion with action. And then in about fourth grade, I wanted to be an artist. I declared myself an artist. And then it took until college to actually say that, no, I'm a painter. It tells me a lot more about what I'm trying to do, the action of being a painter. So I think that I probably could be a very highly acclaimed house painter, but I'm terrified of ladders, so I'm perfectly content to just be the other kind of painter. I'm constantly fooling around with colors, trying different combinations. Here I'm making a magenta purple with titanium white, which is opaque, cobalt teal, which is also opaque, and quinacridone magenta, which is transparent. And the three together bring me to kind of a beautiful magenta purple, to which I'll add more of the cobalt teal, bluing it, bending it further into the more blue purple range. And you can see it's a really kind of spacious color and somewhat reminiscent of the colors of John Graham, who I'm looking at a lot lately. And I'm going to apply it here in a dry brush technique. And it kind of just cuts holes in the space. It puts cracks and implies shadows where there were none before. I am terrified of flying. I can't stand air travel, and I have to do a lot of it. I had a scary experience on a flight in the early 90s, which I'll talk about in another episode. I prefer driving, and each year I try to block out time in which I can rent a car and drive long distances completely alone, usually in the Southwest. I like to drive and listen to the radio. And what entices me so much about those experiences is the fact that no matter how much my mind wanders, how transported I become, I still have to maintain controls of the car. I still have to operate the controls. And I think that's an apt metaphor for painting. No matter how transported we become, no matter how released we are, we still have to maintain the operation of the materials. We still have to handle the brush, the pigments, and all of those attendant properties of paint. I've used this metaphor before, that a painting is like looking through a window on a rainy day. Either you notice the little droplets of water on the glass in front of you, or you notice what's beyond that. Never both at the same time. And I like situations where I am taken to one place here, but I still have to maintain something here, some sort of control. Two things that I love outside of painting are barbecue and magic. And I seek these things out. I think it's important for me anyway to cultivate interests that really on the surface don't have anything to do with painting, but in some way always boomerang back into my work. I go to magic conventions every year. I go to Star Trek conventions, and I have a United Federation of Planets t-shirt, which I wear. I like the TV series from the 80s, Dallas, and I've gone to South Fork Ranch and been to an actual barbecue, and I met the cast. It was great. I like basketball. I suck at sports, but I like the rules of basketball. And I also went ziplining last year in Nevada, and it was terrifying. Again, I like situations where I have to maintain a modicum of control and nimbleness or die. So on one hand, a painting can transport us, but on the other hand, it can reassure us in its artifice. That the artist sets up a proscenium around an experience for us to enter. But every time we get too far in the transportation in our minds, we're immediately slingshot back into the object, the form again. And the artist has to deliver both exquisitely. We're having a horrible winter here in New York City. It's bitter cold every single day. And on the radio the other day, they played Schubert's Winterreise, which I've always loved. And it's just such a beautiful example of a composer setting up a series of musical structures with all of those limitations, but still allowing us enough room to curl up and snuggle up within the form that the artist creates. There is the artist, then there's the world, and then together they create a third thing. And that's what I love, is that third thing. How much the artist loves us to give us the third thing. And I think art offers us a way back into ourselves by first making us unrecognizable to ourselves. We are seeing the world through someone else's eyes. And I think that the notion of identity is a collaboration. And that's what I find so appealing about these tasks that have rules and that require me to do this, but also free me to do that. I want to revisit a quote I've mentioned before from Andy Warhol, and also it was Marshall McLuhan, who said that art is whatever you can get away with. And when teachers would say to me, Brian, painting is whatever you want it to be, I would feel offended. That's how you speak to a child. And it's far too cynical for me. I understand what Warhol meant. We should constantly question the ideas of one another and the boundaries of what we do. But I always trust in the motives of the person behind it. There's not an ounce of cynicism in my work, and I don't look for that in the work of others. When I stand in front of someone's painting, I drop my guard and I commit fully to their vision and their faculty. And I trust they'll do the same to my work. Naive? You bet it is, but I'm just putting it out there. Why would you want a pilot to come on the intercom and say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do whatever I can get away with to get you to El Paso? Or a surgeon to say, medicine is whatever I can get away with. So why would you want artists to say that? I believe that my job as a painter, our job, requires decades of practice and diligence and scholarship, and also clear intention. I learned a lot in the late 80s and early 90s when I worked in art galleries here in New York, which specialized in self-taught and outsider art. I learned that that those artists didn't need the approval of the art world. In many cases, they weren't even aware of an art world. That the blood ran closer to the surface because they were missing that layer of protection. That the work was not so technically proficient, but that also removed that insulating layer. I felt closer to the soul of the work. These artists weren't just trying to get away with stuff. They had clear burning intention. They were trying to fit into this world by inventing another world. And I made it a point to keep my eyes open, my pie hole shut, and try to learn. And I remember Joan Mitchell told me once, figure out what you love and let it kill you. And that's what I'm devoted to. So every year as I grow older and more tired and more sore, I am convinced that all of my paintings are already finished, and my job is to simply take them from invisible to visible, to put them into tangible form. I love the notion of things concealed in plain sight. And in that every time I put a brush mark down, it's extinguished forever. I'll never be able to use that brush mark again. I have a limited inventory of brush marks, and eventually I'm going to run out. So in order to create something, you have to kill something. This painting is a slow motion train wreck. I'd been working on this painting since June of 2013. I thought it was finished. My photographer came over a couple of weeks ago and we shot a bunch of things, including this painting. Then the images are sent to my dealers here in New York, and they're entered into inventory and in some cases even presented to potential collectors. This is towards my next show, which is here in New York City in October. And this painting called Raindrops, luckily it was still in my studio, and it drives people nuts when I do this, but I'll even after the image has already been set and gone out, I'll go back and change it. And it's doing too many things. It was bugging me. There's nothing weaker than a painting that tries too hard, and this was trying too hard. I needed to reclaim the tonality of this thing. The tone is based on cadmium orange and quinacridone violet. I needed to spread that across, to rework it back into a lot of the forms. I would take 2 and 3 forms and combine them into one, trying to simplify the structure of it. I changed the top. Too much blue. I wanted to have those kind of shale and pink and pale green colors. I also intensified the cadmium orange and cadmium yellow areas at the top right, which is kind of the heat and the detonation point of the picture. It helps establish the firm foreground. And then I intensified the greens, which move down below and around the periphery. Green is a great lifting color, and green underneath another color creates a kind of suspension or floating effect. And I was listening to an interview with Pete Seeger the other day on NPR in celebration of his career and on the occasion of his death last week. And he brought up an adage which we're all familiar with: think globally, work locally. And I wasn't doing that. I was doing too many little parts, and I wasn't focusing on the entire field at the same time. I've always said that the hardest part for me of a painting is the middle part, when it's doing too many things. There's a great quote from the singer Donovan, which I've posted before. First there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is. And I was stuck in the middle part. There was no mountain. And now I feel like the thing is humming again. I feel like it works more cohesively as one battlefield, and I feel like there is a mountain. So the painting is still called Raindrops, and it will be in my show in October of 2014.